Yeah. Namaskar and good evening to my Indian friends. And namaskar and good morning to my friends who are from Western countries. I'm Dr. Nihar Patra, recently assumed my duty as University Librarian of Manipur Central University, Imphal. Well, I am pleased to welcome all the participants for joining this session, which will be a great learning session for all of us who are trying so hard to do something good for their library users. I'm heartily grateful for all your support and the beautiful messages which you have sent to me for organizing these sessions. I consider this is a unique first-time blending program as one side we are going to listen from a company who is the world leader in library technology at a single forum. And they continuously engage in new innovation for library by developing the product like Alma Primo. Another side, we have our chief speaker, Mr. Marshall Brading, who is continually and critically reviewing this technology. And I am like other library professionals who are implementing this technology. So it is the blending thoughts of three areas, that is technology development, review those technology and its implementation. So I hope that this will be a great session for all of us. And now this webinar is to understand the different innovative technology which have been done in the library science. This day, technology is a global necessity to reaching the unreached, whether it is COVID or the normal situation. I hope this webinar will be the help for the library professional to build the latest state-of-the-art library to support their teaching, research, consulting, training, and learning requirements. So for this, I have invited Mr. Marshall Brading, who is internationally renowned technology consultant, and Mr. Sanjay, who is senior training consultant partner in ProQuest. Both are experts in their field, and it will be great to listen them and take the benefits from their experience. So before starting with our Marshall Brading, the chief speakers, I'd like to introduce about him. Most of us well known with Master Building, who is a renowned technology consultant and author speakers. He will be present his expert views on different possibilities of innovations in the libraries in India. The important thing is that, he's regularly reaching the library professionals all over the world since last 2 decades, if I am not wrong, and publishing his monthly column from Library Technology Guide. He's a creator and editor of this guide and the library.org online directory of the libraries. And he's the editor of the Smart Libraries newsletter published by the American Library Association and has authored the annual library system report published in American Libraries since 2014. Library Journal from 2002 to 2013, and by then he has authored 9 issues of ALA, American Library Association Library Technology Reports, and has written many other articles and book chapters. Mr. Marshall has edited and authored 8 books. He has published 1,023 articles, and he has been an invited speaker for many libraries conferences and workshops throughout the United States and internationally in more than 30 countries. He is the former director for innovative technology and research at Vanderbilt University Library and executive director at Vanderbilt Television News Archive, USA. Out of many more awards, Mr. Brading was the recipient of the Lita and Library High Tech Award for his outstanding communication for continuing education in library and information science. If I read all his contributions, it may take me to complete 2 days. So I hand over Mr. Marshall Brading for your presentation. Mr. Marshall Brading.
Well, good evening to all of you, all my friends in India and other parts of the world. I'm delighted to have a chance to speak with you today. So what I want to do is kind of talk about some global trends that I see happening in the realm of library technologies, but especially try to think about how they apply in the Indian context. Go on to the next slide, please. So I'm fortunate to have been able to visit India. Oh, go back. Go back. to the previous slide, if you can, the one that shows the map of India. Go back to that, please.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that. So just want to be able to say that I've been fortunate to visit India a number of times. The red stars are the places that I've visited. Been fortunate to be able to visit many other countries as well. And what I've learned through my travels and my work here in the United States is that, there's not one size fits all for technology. Cultures are different, languages are different, the context of libraries are different. The amount of resources available in any given country may be abundant or it may be scarce. So all of those go into play. So there's no single right or best approach to library technology. It all depends on the context of the area. And like I say, I feel fortunate to be able to visit India 4 or 5 times already. And I look forward to future visits in the future after this current crisis have subsided. So I look forward to maybe meeting more of you in person over time. So go ahead and go to the next slide. As mentioned, I manage this site called Library Technology Guides. It is a repository of a lot of information relative to the world of library technology. As I gather information from my research and my writing and the reports that I do, it all is stored in this site one way or another, and in most cases is available to anyone that cares to come and visit. So just invite you to come and visit the site. Go to the next slide. I want to show some of the things that are in it that I think are of interest. Naturally, I have databases of all of the different companies and the products that are relevant to libraries as they look for new technology solutions. This is kind of the front page of the vendors that are covered. There are a lot of organizations that provide technology globally. Those I definitely try to include to the extent possible, and there are also a number of companies that serve specific countries. So that's kind of what makes it interesting and in a way kind of complicated is that, there are these different kind of layers of organizations that end up providing kind of a broader realm of services. Sure, the global providers, like our other speaker, ProQuest, they do business in all parts of the world, but also in every country in the world, every region in the world, there are local providers that have local solutions that are designed to work with they have local expertise, they have language expertise, they work with the libraries within their region. Next slide, please. One thing that I've recently done is kind of bring a lot of information together that was harder to get to in what I call dashboards. So most of this information was available before, but it was kind of hard to get to. So the idea of having kind of a single, simple way to get to lots of different information about each of the different companies and products. This is just an example that I grabbed, showing the dashboard, in this case, for innovative interfaces, now owned by ProQuest. Next slide. Go ahead. Okay. And then this is the product dashboard, where it shows a lot of different ways to look at how a particular library technology product has been deployed in the world, what kinds of libraries are using it, what parts of the world it's been used in, some of the migration patterns where have libraries, what systems were they using before they implemented this system, and so forth. And then the numbers of installations and statistics and all of that, and satisfaction. I do a satisfaction survey every year, and these graphs are kind of summarize that for each individual product. And then, of course, news announcements that are made related to the product. Next slide, please. Again, just examples of data. One in the libraries.org directory of libraries, there are about 100,000 libraries represented in that directory, and I have information about the current and previous automation systems. So this is an example of the kinds of reports that you can do once all that data is together in one place. This is showing what systems libraries were using before they migrated to their current system. Next slide. It's interesting to watch the product life cycle over time, where you see a product is introduced, a lot of libraries will implement it, and then over time they may move on to something else. So this is an example of a product that has had a life cycle of going from about 95 to current. It's still widely used, but you can see that it had its peak in the mid 2000s, and now a lot of libraries are moving away from it. Many still use it, but it's just an example of what you can do when you have that data available. Go back to previous slide. So when I think about this, and when I visited India, no, next slide, the next one. It's easy to go to. Is that I don't have really good data about libraries in India, and I would, out of, there are 20 or 30,000 entries for libraries in the United States, and countries in Europe are well represented, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, but not India so much. So I would really like to make an effort to get a much better representation of the many tens of thousands of libraries that are in India. 2019 is a very, very small representation. And I can't really follow, all my research is based on data, and data about, the systems that libraries use. So it's really hard to track the trends in India, other than kind of anecdotally and from my experiences in travel and the other ways that I keep track of information. But, my research, my interest is in data. So I would seriously like to do a lot more work to gather information on libraries in India. There are different ways to do that. Sometimes I'm able to get lists or databases of libraries provided by official organizations, either at the state or national level, or maybe there's a possibility for librarians in India to kind of pitch in and help contribute data to create records for the libraries that they work in and their region and so forth, and really help me out in being able to give India a better representation in my research, and once it's on library technology guides, it really provides a global platform so that anyone in the world can be aware of the systems and the technologies and the innovation that is going on in Indian libraries. Next slide. So just plead to help me out. So this is a map that's generated out of the libraries in India. Part of the data I collect are the geographic coordinates, so I'm able to generate maps. And so you can see this is a very, very sparse representation of libraries in India. And hopefully, with your help, I'll be able to improve that significantly in the future. Next slide. As I said earlier, it's important to recognize the differences. There's not a one-size-fits-all. Libraries of different types are quite different. Public libraries, for example, in the United States and other countries, have vastly different interests and requirements than academic libraries, and therefore gravitate to different systems. And then country by country, region by region, there are differences in those regions and those countries that shape the technology used by libraries and how they implement it and kind of what their missions and work looks like. The amount of economic resources available, whether you have budgets to purchase high-end systems from commercial vendors, or whether libraries are mostly implementing open source solutions because they don't have a lot of money in their budgets to purchase software. culture, language, of course, makes a difference. The kinds of materials they collect, whether it's available mostly in print or mostly electronically, varies by country and by region. How librarians are trained and educated is different. The number of professional librarians available versus other types of workers in libraries. The mix kind of depends on the educational system and the way that librarianship is cultivated in each of these regions. So, again, it just emphasizes, this caveat that, it's really important to look at the context of libraries before assessing trends, making recommendations, because it's going to be different in every region. The same types of solutions that I see here in the United States wouldn't necessarily be the same recommendations I would make to libraries in different parts of India. So I think it's important just to keep that in mind. There's no right answer. There's no best system. It all depends on the context of the library. Next slide. So let's think about some of the trends in the industry, the companies and the organizations that together comprise what I call the library technology industry. Next slide. So there's been a lot happening in recent years. There's been a lot happening over the last decade or so that are consistent. You can see just in the last year or so, there have been a number of acquisitions and mergers working toward consolidation. If you look at my Smart Libraries newsletter on my website, you can see I've written kind of extensively about each of the business events that have happened, so that provide kind of information and perspective about what that means to libraries relative to the technology products that will be available to them. Go to the next slide. So consolidation has been the trend for quite a long time now. As long as I've been following the library technology industry, there have been kind of one round of mergers and acquisition after the other, forming kind of larger technology companies that mostly just do technology. Examples of that are Circe Dynix, where it's an ILS company that has been consolidated among a lot of antecedent companies, each with their own ILS, and then Biblioteca in the RFID and self-service equipment. Both of these companies pretty much stick to a single type of technology activity, but have consolidated many previous companies through acquisitions. That's still happening, but what's happening more are what I call vertical consolidations, where kind of larger companies that are involved in other areas of business and activity related to libraries are also buying technology companies. So you end up with very large companies that are involved in both providing content to libraries, technology, and other kinds of services. The two key examples of that you would probably be aware of are ProQuest, their recent acquisition of Ex Libris, and even more recent acquisition of Innovative, and before that, Serial Solution, means that they have kind of bought their way into the library technology arena in a really big way. They were a big content provider, and now they, as far as academic libraries are concerned, probably one of the biggest technology providers around. EBSCO is similar kind of patterns in different ways. They're a bigger company, more into content and databases. Their EBSCO discovery service is very widely used around the world. And in recent years, they've made efforts to also become a key technology company through their involvement with the open source Folio project, the acquisition of the Stacks web portal software, and many other smaller acquisitions and projects and products and services. So increasingly involved with software as a service as a strategic part of their offerings. Follett, you probably don't see much in India, but it's an even bigger company, a $3 billion company, mostly oriented to primary school education and not as much higher education. But then they recently acquired, not recent, it's been a couple of years now, Braker and Taylor, one of the largest publishers distributors of books to public libraries. So again, ongoing consolidation toward very large global companies. Next slide. I find the history of library automation to be fascinating. I try to find ways to convey that. So lately I have been developing these organizational maps, these visualizations that show the history. So going from right to 1980 to left, current day, you can see that the current companies have really a long and interesting history of business acquisitions as well as products they've developed internally. This shows the product, the kind of the family tree of ProQuest. Very complex, and there's stories behind each of these different mergers or acquisitions that led to the company that there is today. I could spend hours talking about that. Show the next slide, please. Okay, and similar with EBSCO. Again, companies with long and interesting histories involved both with content. I try to represent those on the bottom half of the family tree and technology on the top half. So again, there are stories behind each of these events that I find interesting and I've written about over the years. Next slide. This has led to an interesting dynamic globally where, again, picking on two of the biggest companies that are involved in both content and technology, you can see a lot of parallels that go on as these companies grow and assemble themselves, with different pieces and parts that they either build or acquire, showing common interest in content and discovery and technology in different aspects of the library. Again, they're not exact correspondence. There are different levels of emphasis, with ProQuest and Ex Libris kind of being more on the high end of higher education libraries. ProQuest and then EBSCO being involved, kind of more on the content and discovery and recently open science kinds of projects. So it's just really interesting to see how these larger companies kind of grow up in parallel as the market matures in kind of top, stable solutions, I would say. Smaller companies, they're going to change ownerships and so forth. But once EBSCO or ProQuest, Elsevier, and others acquire a company, it's usually a permanent arrangement. So we're seeing this play out in the library technology industry. Next slide, please. And this shows it's not just the library technology piece, but the scholarly publishing arena. Again, I don't provide as much detailed information about that, but I just wanted to be able to show that the same types of vertical mergers and acquisitions are happening in the content companies, the major scholarly publishers that we're familiar with as well. Again, I won't go into the details of this slide, but the slide will be available for you. And again, I've written a lot about this. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the technology trends. So how do libraries build or buy and implement technologies to help them meet the challenges that they face as libraries? The biggest challenge in recent decades has been this ever-increasing proportions of digital electronic content that libraries have to manage. What technologies have they implemented to be able to help them do that? Next slide. So let's think about the collections that libraries have. Again, this is U.S. libraries. Indian libraries will be different. But what portion of their collections are electronic? What portions are print? What are they spending their money on? So this slide shows that in large U.S. academic libraries, the majority of their collections go toward subscriptions to electronic resources, and the blue part, collections are mostly print materials. And even within that 25%, there's a lot of ebooks there too, fixed orders. So academic libraries are moving toward a mostly electronic collection, though I definitely believe that print collections will endure for the duration. I do not imagine a time when libraries are all digital. I think that they will continue to deal with print and physical resources as long as libraries exist. So that really means more complexity as libraries have to manage an ever more complex set of collections. Next slide. And the activity surrounding those collections naturally is going to change. One thing that is it's definitely been happening in U.S. academic libraries is that the circulation of print materials has plummeted over recent decades. The number of new print materials that libraries buy is less. The number of loans of those is going down year by year. Yet it's still important, again, to emphasize that this isn't an activity that I anticipate going away. And of course, the converse is that it's happening at an even more rapid rate. The use of electronic resources is increasing. Difference in ways that statistics are reported and so forth kind of makes this line chart look a little odd, but you get the point. Print circulation down and electronic resource use is rising rapidly. Next slide. So think about some of the trends in the way that libraries globally have been implementing technology. They really need to find ways to gain efficiencies and increase the impact of their collections. As I've said, the number of print resources that academic libraries buy is less. There's still a lot of demand for it. Not every library is going to be able to purchase all of the materials that their users are going to need, that their patrons are going to need. So how do you make the best use of it? Do you more and more kind of shared collections, shared infrastructure, common systems so that libraries can provide access to the largest possible pool of materials at the lowest cost. One of the trends for that is what I call shared infrastructure, where libraries come together and implement systems together with common access to their collections instead of every library implementing their own system individually. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Next slide. So lots of different strategies are going on in the way that libraries are managing their print collections. We'll talk more, their electronic collections are vast and subscription-based and moving toward more open access models. We'll talk more about that. Libraries are in their physical spaces having less space dedicated to housing print collections and increasing the amount of space dedicated to user space, collaborative space. It's just a fundamental change that academic libraries have seen in the last 2 decades. So as they move collections away, you don't want to. You want to make sure that these materials still remain accessible, requestable. So, especially among large libraries and those that have the right kind of organizational structures to do so, they're moving towards shared storage, where you have off-site large-scale book repositories that can hold millions of volumes. I've done work with the Recap facility that's shared by 4 major academic libraries in the Princeton area with a capacity of 20 million volumes. So kind of this high-density Harvard model storage system is one of the ways that libraries cooperate together to provide access to large amounts of print materials, yet that can't be stored on site. Some have automated storage units in the library. University of Nevada, Las Vegas is an example of that. And then kind of other programs where it's distributed, but they manage a shared print program so that they track what print materials are kept by what libraries that any of the participants can also request. And there are agreements that the last copies will be preserved even in this distributed environment. Next slide. So the technology platform that we see emerging for academic libraries is what I call library services platform. It is kind of the thing that comes after an integrated library system, where it uses kind of modern multi-tenant technology in order to be able to help libraries manage complex collections that are print, electronic, and digital, and to do that at scale and with modern technology. Again, I could spend a long time talking about the specifics of that. Go on to the next slide. But it is, these platforms, again, there are a few different of them, not very many, but they kind of have these common functionality. They're designed to manage print and electronic on the same system, in contrast to integrated library systems that are really designed mostly for print. They have built into them electronic resource management, print resource management, link resolution, kind of a lot of functionality that previously lived in separate systems. They're flexible in how they manage metadata, able to manage, MARC records, Dublin Core, BibFrame, and so forth. And they have built-in knowledge bases to help manage electronic resources. Analytics are kind of a foundation of it to help libraries make data-driven decisions related to collection, acquisition, and deployment, and so forth. So it's kind of the modern business system for academic libraries now. It'll be interesting to see if they come out for other kinds of libraries later on. Next slide. And then, managing the collection of libraries is really just the foundation these days. Of course, you want to be able to manage your collections in the most efficient ways, but libraries are, increasingly looking beyond traditional services to be able to be involved in different ways in the institutions they support, to be able to provide course level materials and ways for instructors to be able to integrate library materials into teaching and to be able to be more involved in the research agenda of higher education institutions. So they're looking for kind of greater impact and involvement in areas that are beyond collection management and of interest to the administration at the university level. Not looking at the library as just a warehouse of books and a way to get electronic content, but as a way to help the institution advance both in its research agenda and in the way that it teaches. So, these are important times for libraries to be able to step into that expanded role. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. How do libraries become more involved in institutional research? Been providing bibliographic support for a long time to help researchers get access to previous work, but it's the opportunities now for more through the assistance in developing research data management plans, curate research data, repositories of research data, kind of important work for academic libraries these days. And then to help the institution garner funding to support research through resources of funding opportunities, to highlight the research of the institution, to be able to attract researchers and research funders and so forth. So yeah, that's an important thing that academic libraries are doing. I know that libraries in India are beginning to do that to a certain extent, but as I think about academic libraries in India, this seems like one of many areas of opportunity for additional work and investigation. Next slide. So naturally, you want to be able to have the technical infrastructure to be able to manage library collections in the ways that they come these days, and that's increasingly digital, electronic, print as well. Through my travel and knowledge of India, I'm aware that print collections in India tend to be more important than other parts of the world. There's a higher proportion of print relative to electronic. That's not surprising, but that will change over time as well. So to make sure that libraries in India do have good technical infrastructure to be able to manage collections of electronic resources as those continue to build. So what kinds of systems are libraries in India looking at, given that the traditional integrated library system really isn't designed to fully manage electronic resources? Next slide. And I want to come back to this topic of shared infrastructure, where it's important to be able to provide access to the broadest universe of content to the community that the library serves. Throughout the world, I see more and more projects where libraries are banding together for shared systems that the users across all the institutions can gain access to the same view of that combined collection and be able to request resources, whether it's in their local library or in a partner library. I see a pretty broad shift from each institution, each university, having its own library with its own individual integrated library system, moving more toward these shared systems. There's a lot of consortia, statewide, national systems, and so forth that are kind of joining that trend. It removes a lot of the obstacles that libraries face when they operate automation systems that are isolated. It allows groups of libraries together to be able to do collaborative collection development, where one university with a certain specialization would collect in one area, and other universities in other areas would, again, collect in their areas of strength. So I think no library can collect everything, and then so how do you build cooperative collections that can be shared so that you have kind of truly broad and deep collections that any community member has access to. And that means shared access. So how do you use the basic infrastructure to be able to request and fulfill the needs of users? It's kind of all built in these shared systems. How can you redistribute the talent of the university so that in the same way you do collaborative collection development, you do collaborative cataloging, so that catalogers in one university with particular areas of expertise in language and subjects can describe materials even if they're not necessarily acquired by their own institution. So there's a lot of opportunities to make better use of library physical and people resources as you move toward shared systems. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So there are a lot of benefits in doing that. You know, when you think about it, each institution implementing its own system is the most expensive way to do automation. You start getting efficiencies in operation and in cost when you are buying into a shared system as opposed to doing it all yourself in an isolated way. So it's a way that you can lower the cost per institution, which I think is important in countries in Latin America and India and other parts of the world where the resources to buy systems, are scarce. So again, you see shared systems happening more in wealthier nations, and I think that the benefits to those that aren't as wealthy are even more profound. Next slide, please. And there are a lot of projects like that I can talk about in the Western world, some that are listed here. The Orbis Cascade Alliance of kind of large and small public and private institutions in 3 states in the U.S., all of the academic libraries in Wales, all the public libraries in South Australia, the academic libraries in Hong Kong, and so forth, have all gone together to implement a shared system as opposed to having individual systems per library. Next slide. And one of the interesting observations, one state in the U.S., California, the most populous state in the country, it's interesting that, it has three educational systems. One is the University of California system, often known as the California Digital Library, 10 very large campuses, kind of the flagship institutions of the state, have recently made a move from separate systems per campus to a shared system for all of the campuses. And keep in mind that each of these campuses are very large. With the University of California, Los Angeles, 10 million volume collection, Berkeley, 12 million. So each of these is large. And then to think of a system that combines them all is massive. Next slide. California Community Colleges is one of the largest educational systems in the world, 110 institutions serving 2.1 million students combined. And they have gone from separate systems to a shared system in the last year. Again, hoping to gain new efficiencies in the way that they do education at the community college level through the implementation of this system. So a very large collaborative project. The next slide. And then the California State University system, kind of the mid-level institutions. Again, a lot of these are already quite large. They're kind of a notch under the University of California system, but you can see that they have combined collections of 25 million items and serve 1.4 million students. So again, a very large implementation of an automation infrastructure to help these institutions gain efficiencies that otherwise they couldn't achieve with separate systems. Next slide. So again, collaborative infrastructure is a global trend. My observation in India is that each university, each library has its own integrated library system, so kind of operating in silos. And then often within a larger university, especially, there may be multiple libraries, each of which that may have their own separate systems. So again, I think that there may be an opportunity for libraries in India to think about this shared infrastructure approach in order to be able to increase the impact of their collections and maybe in the long run lower operational costs. The challenge here is that these large-scale projects, even though they end up in saving money in the end, require upfront investments that are always a challenge in institutions in India and Latin America and other countries. Next slide. Go ahead. So, there are a lot of challenges and opportunities. A very large country, limited funding, but also very important kind of people assets, I would say. Good, strong professional librarianship and technical expertise. Countries all around the world, rich nations often look toward India for technology development, often because it's at lower cost, but in recognition of the high level of technical expertise that's available in India. And again, the opportunity to move from institutional silos to shared infrastructure, is going to be, it's not going to be easy. It may not even be desirable, who am I to say, but it would involve kind of a cultural and organizational change. Again, I'm not one to be able to say that would be a good or a bad thing for India, but just to think of it as a possible opportunity. How do you go, there's not this tradition of consortia and statewide systems in India that there might be in other parts of the world. So are there opportunities? Is it desirable? Is that a conversation that librarians in India want to have? Next slide. So naturally, the world around libraries is changing profoundly as well. Next slide. Scholarly publishing, defines the content that libraries provide access to for their users, and that world is changing dramatically. in recent decades, access to articles and scholarly works of different sorts was either through sales of print or subscriptions to universities via their libraries. That is changing now. Has been changing for a long time, but there's kind of more progress lately moving toward open access, which again isn't a panacea when it comes to providing access to scholarly information, because it still involves cost. I don't believe that there has been a lot of savings, that there will be a lot of savings overall as the world moves to open access publishing, because it's just a trade-off of, are the costs paid upon publication or upon access? So in the very long term, there may be savings, but in the short term, I think there will be better and more universal access, but the costs are still going to be high. Libraries need to have the infrastructure to be able to manage that transition regardless. It's important for libraries as libraries have been kind of the focus of funding for access to scholarly information in the current model. If that funding changes to the research institutes, then that could be a strategic loss for libraries. Next slide. So again, the implications are profound for libraries as open access becomes more prevalent. Libraries have to have the technical infrastructure to be able to manage not only the existing subscription-based access, which I think will endure for the very long term, but be able to also provide access to what's known to be open access, that any researcher, any individual is entitled to get access to. How do they know that it exists? So that's part of the discovery and management infrastructure that libraries are going to have to incorporate. So it does mean, again, more complexity, not less. I think it's counterintuitive that, if there's more open access, then the work of the libraries will be simpler. Well, I think it's going to be more complex. It just adds one more business model to the ways that libraries provide access and funding of resources to their institutions. Tracking open access entitlements is very complex. Next slide. So open source is an important aspect of technology, and of course it wouldn't be a complete talking to libraries in India without mentioning that open source is is very prevalent in India, kind of the default way of implementing library automation. Next slide. So globally, proprietary systems are implemented in much higher proportions than open source. But then in Latin America, India, some parts of Asia, open source is dominant. So again, it depends by level of resources, by geographic area, and kind of mindset as well. So next slide. So it's definitely a trend for libraries to use open source software. In the wealthier nations, it's often through commercial support, so that a library doesn't really have to have its own developers and technical people in order to be able to implement an open source system. Others do it entirely on their own through support from the community of developers and implementers that are out there to do that. And then there are some governmental organizations that manage the implementation of open source. I think an example of that's Malaysia. And then different ways that that's developed. I don't really want to take the time to go into that. That's going to be an hour talk in itself to talk about how the difference between open source and proprietary. Next slide. And then there are a variety of products that are widely used in libraries. COA, which is a very popular system in Indian libraries for managing collections. Evergreen used mostly in the U.S. Invenio, coming out of the CERN Institute in Scandinavia, not real widely used yet. There's one called ABCD that's used widely in Latin America. And then Folio is emerging. Say it's still in the development phase. It's actually being implemented. There are maybe 4 libraries now that have put parts of Folio into production. And then in Discovery, it's widely used through the Viewfind and Blacklight products. And then, repositories. So, open source is a important part of the overall library technology industry. Next slide. In the U.S., so it's a pretty small portion of academic libraries, but it's growing a bit. So 92% of academic libraries in the U.S. use a proprietary system, and then almost 8% are using some type of open source product, mostly COA, a little bit of Evergreen, and I expect to see higher numbers of Folio in the future. Next slide. So COA is widely used in the U.S. Just shows that. Move on. Next slide. Throughout the world, I think that COA is probably the most widely implemented integrated library system in the world. It's hard to count, especially since I don't have good numbers on the libraries in India that use it, which is in the many thousands. But when I think about the systems out there, COA is probably the one most implemented. Next slide. Folio, just want to mention, important development, a library services platform, developed in open source software, microservices architecture. It's been in development for going on 3 years now, and now it's entering its implementation phase. So it'll be interesting to see how that system is used going forward. Big support from EBSCO in its development and rollout. It's the parallel effort where Ex Libris has focused on Alma as its library services platform that's built through proprietary software. EBSCO, has similar interests in being involved in library collection management and has chosen to do the open source route with Folio. Next slide. So there's a lot of challenges and opportunities. You in India, will be able to have your own conversations over time. I know you already do, and again, there's no right or wrong way, but in the context of the global library technology industry, what are things that libraries in India can do to help advance the way that technology is used to manage, to better manage what they do for their communities? Lack of resources is always a constraint, but as I mentioned earlier, India has a wealth of resources when it comes to the people and technology and the people who manage libraries. Are there organizational initiatives that could help India advance in the way that it uses automation in the shared infrastructure model? Are there opportunities at the statewide or regional or consortial levels to be able to decide to go in together for shared systems across multiple institutions and universities? And that applies to both print and digital content. How can researchers, individuals in India get better access to library materials and collections through whatever model that Indian libraries may choose to look at in the next phase of development? Just close by saying recognizing kind of the professional talent and technology expertise that is prevalent in India. How do you take that into play, into consideration as India, thinks about what its next phase of solutions using technology would be that would kind of help India rise continually, as it always has, in the way that the libraries serve the higher education and the community members of India. So I think that's my last slide. Probably gone a little bit longer than I intended, but I turn it over to the next speaker, and we'll have questions at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bidding. We'll have the question answer at the end of the session. So after we have another speaker, Mr. Sanjay Rajan from the ProQuest. Mr. Sanjay Rajan is based in New Delhi, India, and working as a senior training consultant partner in ProQuest from last 4.5 years. He has more than 11 years of experience in information industry and taking care of the region of India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan with his team. He is an IAS alumni of CSIR and SKR and has worked on green energy technology patents. Apart from his job, still he is engaged in academic research work. During his professional journey, he has interacted with thousands of research scholars in India and other countries like Japan, China, Korea, Nepal, UK, Malaysia, and helped the different organizations in emerging their research and learning process. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay.
You're muted, Sanjay.
Over to Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Very good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for joining this session. On behalf of the ProQuest, I'd like to welcome to all of you. Myself, Sanjay Rajan, and the theme of my session is ProQuest experiences in innovative technology for the library. From last 148 years, ProQuest is serving continuously to the library and their users. And as per our experiences, we realize that library is the heart of the institutional success. Library is the soul of any institution, especially for the academic institution. Library is supporting the students, research scholars, faculty members, and the research officers to empower their research and learning process. Along with that, library is also playing a very, very important role in supporting the institutional objective. And if you see as a library professional in which you are working, at this time, the major objective for any institutions to improve the research excellence and the research output for any institution, and also work on enhancing the student's experience. These are all the important work where a library has been engaged and trying to do their best for their institutions and their users. But there are certain challenges library is also facing in doing these kinds of the work. Maybe that is the if you, as a library professional, I think everyone has realized that the changing needs and expectations of the students. Sometimes it is quite difficult to manage those expectations, new emerging expectations. Sometimes it may be the lack of the effective data management. Sometimes it may be due to the lack of the tools and workflow to do the effective collaborations with the academic stakeholders. Certain limitations are there for the library professionals and the libraries to reach the destinations where institutions want to take the library for empowering their goal and final objective. So as a ProQuest, we know that these are the important challenges existing in the library, and we are continuously developing and investing to develop such kind of product which can be helpful for the library and the research scholars to maintain their research, to empower their research landscape. If you see our investment and our investment in the technological and the library perspective, then you can find that ProQuest is investing in two different directions. One is the context of developing the research content solutions, and the second is developing the higher ed cloud platform to empower the library services and making it more effective and the value-added services for the library. And all the technology which we have developed in the recent years, that is really going to redefine the future of the library. And I hope so that can be the important element for any library, not only in India, but also around the world. That ProQuest is continuously working to connect the research scholars with their better research, better learning, and the better insight for their research and learning domain. In this context, first of all things, if you see in last 2 or 3 months during the lockdown phase in India, especially in India, all research professionals or the research scholars or maybe the library professionals, you realize that at this time, one of the most important requirements for the library users is they want the barrier-free access of the multidimensional content for their research work or the academic work. And by seeing this important need for the users, we have launched the ProQuest One Academic, and this is a platform which has been awarded as the best interface platform in the Charleston Advisor 18th Annual Leader's Choice Award in 2019. This platform can give a single unified research experience with extraordinary multidisciplinary curated content. And this is quite, I think, one of the important requirement for research scholars in any perspective. In the last 10 years, we have just observed that in most of the research organizations or the academic organizations, research scholars and our users are trying to make a touch base with all the different kind of the content. Maybe it is a video content, maybe it is a ebooks, maybe it is a dissertation thesis or the journals content. As a research scholar, they do not want to dare to miss any single piece of information or sources for empowering their research and learning. I'm not here to talk about the products. I'm here to just see the context, give in context that how much technological investments we have done in creating this kind of the platform. If I take you one step backward for developing this product, then you can see the number of the different types of the product that is available, content that is available on this platform. Video content, ebooks, current news, working papers, market industry report, dissertation thesis. If you see the nature and pattern of all this content, every content have a different kind of patterns. And you can see how much technology, how much hard efforts we have invested to streamlining all the different formats in a unified format. If I take you one step more backward for the development of this product, then you can just realize that we have not only streamlined all the different publishers' content in a single platform, but also we have merged, we have make a unified kind of the pattern from the different set of the databases also. We have on the ProQuest One Academic, you can find the ProQuest Central Content, Academic Complete, PQDT Global, Avon. If you see any of the product like the Avon, that is a separate platform, a unique platform for the video content. If you see the Academic Complete, that is a unique platform for the ebooks. And every platform is completely have a different kind of the pattern and nature. If you are going to download the citations from Avon, that is completely different from the Academic Complete platform. So making a unified platform, a unique platform for the researcher scholars, provide them the barrier-free access. We have done lots of the technological investment for developing this platform. I hope so. We are getting the wonderful response from the users around the world, and I hope so Indian users will also give a wonderful response for this product. By seeing the emerging need of the users, we have also integrated of the popular applications, technological applications like the Google Classroom, Google Drive, OneDrive for the users who are working in the academic domain. And in context of the COVID-19 also at this time, everyone is realizing the importance of the remote collaborations. Most of the faculty members in India have started to take the classes in online mode. And in this online mode, if you are using the ProQuest platform, you do not need to go anywhere. From the ProQuest platform, you can share all the content with your users or with your classroom students. Just you can open your ProQuest platform, open the Google Classroom applications, and where you can embed the content and you can share your recommendations to the students which content can be important for them. On 15 June 2020, we have launched our ProQuest Open Bay platform, where we have enabled the ProQuest platform for the direct entry for the users. Before the 15th June 2020, if you want to access the ProQuest platform, you have to enter through either the username password or through the IP-based access. But now, if you are using the search.proquest.com URL, then you can directly enter into the ProQuest platform, where you can get a chance to explore around 1 billion documents, and you can be able to preview all those content. You can get a look and feel of all those content also. I got an opportunity to do lots of the workshops in every part of the India. And when I interact with the user, one of the most important questions I always got from the user that, sir, you should not stop to enter in the platform. At least as a user, I got a chance to enter in the platform so that I could get a look and feel about the ProQuest content and their features. And our team has worked on those feedbacks from the users and launched this platform. And that can be really a game changer for the users who are doing the research work and things. To making it more applicable for the users, we are expanding the access to the open web. Again, during my workshop experiences, and I have got a chance to interact with the users from top tier institutions to the smaller institutions. And one of the important things I realized that one of the most challenging thing for the users is to remember the URL for the product. If I ask that, do you know the URL of the ProQuest platform? Then surely no, sir. What can be the exact URL for the platform? So now we are through this open access web, we are trying to just create a multiple entry point into the ProQuest platform. Either you are using the search.proquest.com, you can enter in the direct platform through the open web. If you are using the Google, Yahoo, or the Bing, you can also directly enter into the ProQuest platform, or either you are going to use the Google Scholar or any library discovery service or library management tool, you can also enter in. We are expanding the access of the open web for the interest for the users, and I hope so this can be quite beneficial for the users in the coming future. having the content as a library professionals, you are completely, you are most of the time you are focusing on providing the content, subscribing the content from the different publishers, and you are trying your best to give all different kinds of content which you got the recommended from all the faculty members. But if you see from the research perspective, one of the most important thing for the researcher scholars is that for the research they need to do the text and data mining. Text and data mining activity is one of the most important activity for any research scholars around the world. For supporting the researcher scholars in your research organizations, we have launched the one technological solutions for the researcher scholars, TDM ProQuest TDM Studio. If you see the text and data mining as steps, different steps of this, then you can realize that your research scholars are engaged in collecting the different source of informations, and also they have to analyze all those sources of the information. After analyzing, they have to also understand, recognize the pattern that is existing between the different data sets, and also based on those data sets, they have to also identify the existing insights for between those data sets for the research work. But these are not a very simple process. These are quite a painful process for the research scholars. If you see the whole process, after formulating the research question, as a research scholar, you have to build the corpus of the knowledges. You have to clean the data, analyze the text, and gain the insights from those analysis. As a research scholar, I have also gone through this process, and really I realize what kind of the pain I have for the completing my research work. Or I think this kind of pain will be also realized by all the research scholars. If you calculate all those painful areas for the research scholars, then one of the most important thing is that you have to collect those content which are rights cleared. Collecting the content is not very important, but for the text and data mining, you need to focus on those content which have the right cleared content. And also you have to take care of the different formats of the content. During this process, you have to also engage with the libraries. Also, during this process, you have to also share the files of the informations with your respective team members who are a part of the research. At least you have to share with your research guides. And also you have to identify the right kind of the methodology or the techniques through which you can analyze all those data. In my case, when I have just started to save the data, then file was so heavy. I think most of the users who are here, who are in the session, mostly they use the Google Gmail, and in the Gmail you are not getting to save the file which is more heavier than the 25 MB. So it is quite difficult to save those files. And really, if you either you can take the laptop and just try to get the appointment for your research guide and save the content, but it's a very, very time-consuming process. By seeing all this painful area, TDM Studio is going to simplify your research workflow, and very, very simple process. Any research scholars can get through this particular technological solution. As a first step, as a research scholars, when you can get the content from the ProQuest platform can help you in collecting the content from the different sources. Maybe you are looking for some newspaper collection, maybe you are looking for some dissertation thesis, or looking for the journals content. All different kinds of the content you can select from the ProQuest platform through the ProQuest TDM Studio. If you want to use some open access content, you can also use the open access content. If you have your personal content which you have collected from the different sources, then also you can get the facility to upload those contents also in the TDM Studio. After uploading all those relevant content for your research work, now you can start to do the analysis work through the TDM Studio applications. And we are giving a very flexible method for all the researcher scholars. If you have not any idea about the coding, if you are not much aware about the programming languages, then you can use the ProQuest method for analyzing all those contents. If you are very comfortable if you have the good knowledge of the programming language, then you can also, TDM Studio can give you an opportunity to create or generate your own analytical methods. Even if you are not able to capable to develop methods, then also if you are comfortable in using the open source programming language like the Python and R, then also you can use it. It is up to you. We have given the flexible option how you are going to analyze your data. That is up to you. And after analyzing all those data, you can export all those results in your desired format. You want to export all data in the graphical format, table format, or any kind of the format, you can export all those content. And I hope so. This was one of the important requirement for any library or the research scholars. So TDM Studio is directly or indirectly eliminating all the barriers for the library and research scholars to enhance the level of the research or the research excellency. If you see your institutional objective, then you can find one of the most important objective. I already saw in my starting of the session that improving the research output. That is a complete, responsibility for the research professional, and they have to collaborate with the libraries for this particular things. And TDM Studio is going to work as a bridge between library professionals and the library. So TDM Studio is going to help you in supporting, in analyzing, connecting, and discovering the right and meaningful insight from the data. So directly, indirectly, ProQuest TDM Studio is going to support the research scholars, empowering the research scholars from the starting point when you have decided to do the research, from the final output when you are going to complete your research work. In the whole process, you can find one of the important supporting elements from the TDM Studio. You can think as a ProQuest TDM Studio is going to work as one of the most valuable, reliable friend for you in the empowering your research and learning processes. Ex Libris is a part of the ProQuest, is a unit of the ProQuest, which is completely dedicating and focusing on innovating the library technology, especially working for the library technology. If you see the Ex Libris journey, from 2008 to 2019, we have launched so many different products. That is a game changer for the library and the library users. If you see the left-hand side, we have developed Alma, Rosetta, Summon, Primo. These are all a part of the unified library management system and the discovery. And these are all the cloud-based unified library service platform. If you see the right-hand side, we have the Legento, Esplero, Rapido, CampusM, RevWorks, Pivot. These are all the solutions we have developed for extending the library's reach and impact and support the research scholars, faculty members, and the students in your institution. Our services, our solutions are not working only for a specific group of the users. Our solutions are working extensively for all the different kind of the groups of the users. Like, are you a librarian? Then also we have the solution. If you are faculty members, we have the solution. If you are research scholars or students, then also we have the solutions. If you see the developed solutions from the Ex Libris, then you can find in the library management system, we have the Alma, Rapido, RapidIL, and the Rosetta. Marcel, in his session, Marcel has also highlighted the importance of the collaborative and the sharing infrastructure, sharing resources between the different organizations. And in that context, Rapido and RapidIL can be one of the important can fulfill the objective for in that context also. If you are looking for the research and discovery, we have the world-class product like the Primo, Esplero, RefWork, Pivot, and if you're also looking for the students and their learning, empowering their learning processes, then we have the CampusM and the Legento. CampusM is one of the most innovating products we have developed, and your users, who are the students in your campuses, they can get all the different requirements through this mobile application. At this time, COVID-19 has forced every student to place in the remote locations, and CampusM can help them in not only for one activity, but they can also put the attendance through the CampusM. They can also submit the assignment through the CampusM. They can also manage their library borrowing, all things through the CampusM. Wonderful product we have developed for any research organizations. If you see the situation, why I think Marcel has given a very high level importance to the Alma, and he has just mentioned Alma in several slides. So why this is important for the library professionals? If you see the situations before the launching of the Alma, if you see the left hand side circle, then you can see that before Alma, this is the exact situation of the different libraries. As a library professionals, if you are doing any kind of the activities, you have to engage with the different kind of software, different kind of the application. For every activity, you need the separate kind of the application. But in Alma, you are getting the single interface, integrated library management system. Either you are managing the print content or the electronic digital resource management. For everything, whatever you want to do, you can do with the Alma can help you in that. And a single, this can work as a single unified solutions for all the different kind of the library challenges and the problems and the requirement. We have developed Ex Libris higher ed cloud platform, through which we have developed the CampusM, Esplero, Legento, Primo, Summon, all the different kind of platform to support the librarians, research scholars, faculty members, and the students. We have Alma is one of the fastest growing cloud-based library service in the world. We have at one place all the data, all the APIs, all the robust security system. And with the help of this cloud platform, we can develop any product within a very short period of the time. Every month we are releasing the new. Every month we are releasing new. We are doing the new release for all the existing products. So we have developed. We have also established 5 different data centers around the world. So we are self-dependent. We have that kind of infrastructure. If you are facing any challenge, if you have any library issues or challenges, if you want any customized solutions, if you are connecting with the XLOS, we can be capable to develop the solution according to your challenges and the requirement within a very short period of the time. If you want to know some more details about some of the products or some of the information about the X Libris or the ProQuest TDM or the ProQuest Open Web, these are the certain links. My panelist member has also shared some links on these important products and the services. And because time is very limited, so I cannot go in much details. But now we can start some question answer session. And thank you so much for joining this session. And now you can put your question through the chat box, and you can also unmute yourself and ask your question. Mr. Master is here, and I think he is one of the most important speaker for the day, and he is a world level technology leader, and who can help you in getting the answer of all the questions. Thank you so much. Srijit, you can just share the questions if you have got any questions for the Mr. Marshall or for any speakers.
Yeah, we have a few interesting questions out here.
Yeah.
So first of all is when we get any problem, then we search the solutions linear, but technology expand or grow exponentially. So what should be the temperament to cope with these emerging library technologies for Librarian in respect of India?
So is that to me?
Yeah, I think you are the right person to answer this question.
So, it's not easy. So it is unlikely that new approaches, new resources for implementation, and new technologies can be implemented in an exponential way. You need to try to accelerate development, try to be smart about the way that technology is implemented, but it's not realistic to think that you can make, fast magical changes. It takes a lot of hard work, time, and resources in order to be able to do that. But I think what's important is to do that strategically. Doing the same thing, doing more of the same thing, probably isn't going to meet a lot of the challenges that we've talked about. But how do libraries kind of work together collaboratively so that they can take their resources and use them in the best possible way to get to the next step? And that's the thing. You think about, where you want to be and make sure that everything that you implement is contributing toward that goal, as opposed to redoubling on resources and on technologies that may not be long-term solutions. So, again, there's, unless there are things happening in society that would be surprising, to get the resources that it would take to exponentially change the way that technology is used in India. It would be nice, but less likely. But how do you do the hard work to be able to coordinate the way that technology is implemented to accelerate innovation? So not a great answer, but it's all that I can. I think that's kind of what it takes: just hard work and smart thinking.
Yeah, thank you. There is one more question for Marshall. So.
Yeah.
This is about, so do you think in near future the librarian is replaced by a technology-driven robot? What's your view on this?
Oh, no, I don't think so. So robots do certain things, they don't do certain things. We have, there may be areas of manufacturing and so forth where it makes sense to replace people with machines. I think often that comes at a high cost to society. And especially when you think about countries and regions that have a lot of talented people. How do you put those people to work? It's not by replacing them with robots. I don't, how there may be specific areas where robots may be able to do specific tasks that aren't done efficiently by people. But all in all, I think that it's the people that represent a lot of the value that libraries have to offer to their communities. So yeah, I'm not thinking that libraries should invest a lot in robots to replace the workers that they have that are doing a lot of the work related to managing their collections and providing access to it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And this is an open question. So in a scenario of Indian libraries, as you have also mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities lying here. So how do you see technology providers and technology users should collaborate with each other? So anyone can answer this.
I think Mr. Marshall, you can take these questions.
Okay, sure. Just don't want to monopolize. So I think that it's, there are opportunities for collaborative conversations that those who develop technology, libraries that use technology, need to be strategic in the way that they work together to develop the next thing, whether that's through conferences, through committees, through governmental projects. I think that's, how do you take the creative expertise of librarians, the ability and capacity for companies to develop in order to come up with what it is that Indian libraries need next. So, that's kind of how I see it. Sanjay, do you want to say something too?
Yeah. So in that context, I'd like to just add one thing. Ex-Libris is already working on this, and we have already launched Idea Exchange program. So if you search on the Google Idea Exchange Ex-Libris or the ProQuest, you can find that where we collect all the ideas, where we engage with the users. And as a library professionals or even as a researcher scholars, if you have, for example, if you're using any application that you are expecting that this kind of the solutions can be more helpful for their library and as a library professionals, then you can write to us. Our expert team is monitor all those suggestions and ideas, and if your ideas will be accepted, we will develop the applications for that. And we have already developed so many applications based on your suggestions. So I think we are working on that. Still, this is not much popular in India. Maybe some of you are not aware of that, but I'd like to see you on the Idea Exchange platform also. You can share all the ideas. Surely we will happy to take your ideas to develop some new innovative applications for the library. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
I think
The time is running short, so we can share the questions to you and you can answer them individually. And over to you, Nihar sir.
now the time is for the vote of thanks.
Yeah.
Marshall, that in India we are not able to implement the good library technology because of the budget. And now, thanks to the open source, we are slowly trying to implement this technology. And these days, in India, most of the library professionals are the techno-savvy. Some of the people, the library professionals, they are good in technology, and we are gradually implementing those open source software in India. Now comes to the vote of thanks. It's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks for this webinars, and I, on behalf of the Manipur University and the ProQuest team, extend a very hearty note of thanks to our honorable speaker, Mr. Marshall Breeding, who took out the valuable times for his busy schedules, and I extend my special thanks to you for inspiring us, and the way you explain the topic is really exemplary. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay, for the beautiful and the very relevant information for the library professional. And I am very grateful to our administrator and registrar for giving Manipur University Library an opportunity to organize this grand event. I thank our assistant librarian, Mr. Lokendar, for all his support. Thank you to the ProQuest team for giving this platform. As no program can become a successful with a single person. So I extend my big thanks to all the volunteers who have advertised in different social media. I thanks all the national and international participants for making this event grand success. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks to who have joined this session.
You're very welcome. Delighted to be here today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can
you.
end this session.
Have a great day ahead.